Whoa. Hey, everybody. My name is Liam Mucklow. I'm hosting today's webinar. I just found out via text message that I am introducing myself. So sorry about the little delay there. But I'll tell you what, I'm really excited. I think we got a pretty cool hour set up this Tuesday morning. We're going to get to hear from a good friend of mine, Swing Catalyst Ambassador Jason Baile. He's going to talk to you a lot about how he uses Swing Catalyst with the club golfers, day in and day out. Which, to me really is kind of, I guess, like the real world. So before we kick it over to Jason, I put together just a little PowerPoint here. I want to try and set the table for him and, just help deliver some of the learning objectives that you can take away from today and take back to your teaching to ultimately start helping make people better faster. So, the first thing I think for most of us is we have to think about, like, who are we actually coaching out there? So, if you tuned into the last Swing Cat webinar that I was on, I was talking about, Tiger Woods. Well, guess what? Never coached him. So even though it's kind of fun to analyze, it's actually not what happens when I get up in the morning. So, just as an opening thought, I thought this was a great picture. A lot of us out there as coaches, we prepare ourselves with the level of information and detail needed to deal with a guy like Bryson DeChambeau, right? Where he's out there and he's got 2 launch monitors going. He's got his TrackMan over here. He's got his GC quad here. He's got a guy spraying water on the ball. But then when we actually, put our pants on and head into work, the reality is you probably have 6 straight lessons with Mr. Havenkamp. So even though it's exciting to know that stuff, we got to pay attention to where does our business lie. So I went online yesterday. I found this. I think this is important for all the coaches out there because, this is the breakdown of players that play the game. So it actually came from, from this golf data tech company, and they're doing research about product launch. But when they surveyed over 3,000 golfers, to see who has the most influence, well, yeah, we know that tour players have an influence over selling clubs. That's why they get paid sponsorship dollars. We know that club pros have an influence over selling clubs. That's why we get free clubs, right? But at the end of the day, we take a look at this. 7 out of every 10 golfers in your market fits in those bottom 2 layers. And I think that is so important for us to bear in mind when we're trying to get better, right? When we're focusing on ultimately on the education of what we're trying to learn and how we deliver it to our people. So, I found this pretty interesting where we get here. Oh, sorry, I got, whoa, what the heck? I got a whole bunch of people coming in the chat. What the heck? I thought there was supposed to be no one in here. Come on, this is killing me. All right, how do I get this crap out of here? Close chat. Okay, I don't know what's going on. Get rid of chat. Get rid of chat. Okay, I can see my screen again. All right, sorry guys. So anyway, what really matters to our golfers? All right, the first thing that matters is they got to get better. Okay, so I threw this in here. This is straight out of our membership document. So Yannick's one of our clients. In all of your promotional material, you have to tell stories, right? Golf is emotional. People make purchases based on emotion. So you know what? Make sure that they know that people get better when they come to your place. That's first and foremost. All right, the next thing, and I'm excited to hear Jason talk about this, but at the end of the day, if you're in pain or you're injured, you're not golfing. It doesn't matter how much fun you have. So it's so important to us as coaches, especially dealing with the older population, that we coach around physical limitations and we take that into account to build them a safe, functional, injury-free, motion that they can go and repeat for the rest of their lives. And you know what? It's got to be fun, because at the end of the day, there's only so long that someone will put up with getting a little better at golf if they don't enjoy the experience, if they don't enjoy the time with the person. So we always have to find ways to make it fun and engaging. All right, now a couple of things Jason's going to talk about. I said, Jason, I did my best job to find a picture of a tree with a low-hanging branch. It's right. That's what I got, man. So, but I love it. We're on a call this weekend prepping for this, and I love his theory on low hanging branches. So how do I pick what I'm going to work on, right? Because you know how it is. We get a golfer coming in, and there could be hundreds of things we want to work on, but how do we choose what we do? Coaching around injury, absolutely critical. It's no fun if you're asking someone to do something that either hurts them or they can't physically do. And then, also touching on functional footwear, he's got some unbelievable case study information he's going to show us. So, Jason, that is it for me. I am going to turn this thing over to you. Sit back and enjoy.
All right, can you see my screen, my swing catalyst screen yet?
Not yet. I've got you up there on the camera.
Get rid of this guy. Does that bring everybody into swing cat there yet?
Do not have it, no.
All right. Give me a little coaching on how to get you onto sharing my screen.
Okay, so if you hit in the green arrow in the bottom of the Zoom window, it should be a big green one that says share screen.
Gotcha.
Oh, here we go. We're in.
Fantastic. Thank all the coaches for joining in here, and I do want to go over a couple of case studies on some of the things that Liam used in the intro. It's kind of like bring your redneck to work day, I think. So Liam's bringing his redneck into, if there's a language barrier, I apologize, I'm from the South. So we're going to start with a regular club lady golfer, give you a look at her golf swing here in the beginning. Her pressure trace and club information are down there. Obviously, this is one of the typical types of lady golf swings that we may see. They could complain about every iron goes the same distance, don't make a divot, things of that nature. To give you a little background on this lady, wonderful lady, but is recovering, or has recovered, so to speak, from a left hip replacement. So obviously she is showing a trace here that's going all over the place, and an attack angle that doesn't have enough down to it, a path that's moving quite a bit to the left, and no compression to the golf ball or anything. So one of the things we kind of started here was gave her a little bit of a couple of TPI screens. We wanted to make sure that she physically was healed, even though she's out of physical therapy. She's just not in a position to start trusting that hip yet. So most players will make poor golf swings because they have a poor concept. She said, I can't shift my weight. I can't shift my weight. As we see, she's shifting all over the place, just maybe in the wrong directions most of the time. So some of the things we did after realizing that she did have some hip mobility in that lead hip and the trail hip, there were some good working parts there, is we tried to develop a little bit of trust. So one of the things we did was just grab the light ball here, and I had her make a little different pivot and just toss it to me, and she finishes. And as she finishes, she's supposed to tap her trail foot just to kind of signify and signal to herself that she's moved to the lead foot and she's in balance. So we were trying to create some awareness. So when we're talking about those low-hanging branches, some of those things I call just pure awareness where you are in space and time, awareness of where the pressure is in your lead foot versus your trail foot, and where the pressure might be from heel to toe in either foot. And another low-hanging branch is just really focusing on balance. One of my mentors, Jack Lumpkin, used to explain balance as being in the right place at the right time. So that's really what we were exploring here, is just some awareness and creating some new motor patterns here that where she could trust being on her lead foot at the end of her golf swing, and developing the trust that that hip was going to support her. We moved from there to another little drill here where we used a band, another little test for stability here, where I had her using her body to pull against me, where I was trying to pull her back into that wrong spot. She was having to fight me. And as you can see, she does a super job here of getting into the ground just naturally. There were no cues here, loading up a little bit better, and then exploding into the lead leg, once again developing a little more trust in that motor pattern. So I love this drill, something we prescribe to her outside of golf to work on a little bit, just to develop some more motor pattern skills and some more trust. Moved into another drill that was a little bit more golf-like, where we added a K-stick, little cue on the pivot, and then we wanted her to send the ball down the K-stick and then finish again in that position where she could tap her toe. So as she's working through each of these things, these were all in the same lessons. She's developing trust, developing a new motor pattern, and we did hardly anything with the golf club. And if we kind of go back to the beginning and you look at attack angle versus club path, things like that with that old trace, and then you take in some of the things that happened with a golf club in her hand. There's a little drill we did where I placed a tennis ball under the ball of her, half a tennis ball under the ball of her left foot. And she'll load a little bit. She's off her trail foot so she can develop some awareness. We were changing attack angle and path here. And obviously a very different motor pattern, very different path of the club. Attack angle got better, balance got better. So a couple of simple cues with that, just walking her through some things where she could kind of turn into the athlete that she was. We use some of our really cool things here that we can do with swing cat. Change one more. This is her back in her normal golf stance. We can see quite a bit of change in the trace and quite a bit of change in the path. Her managing of the club got a ton better, and she was able to finish in a lot different position without all the zigzagging we had back and forth. So those simple cues changed attack angle on several shots, changed club path dramatically, and we got started where we're trying to go. So I try to call as many high mileage plays as I can. And I know even as an experienced coach, I'm still guessing. Human beings are messy, as our great Scott Lynn likes to say, and they're all a case study of one. So I try to develop a little toolbox that I can start creating a better athlete with as few cues as possible. Going to another player here. Much better.
Jason.
Yes, sir.
Jason, sorry, I had a question. I was wondering, was that one lesson?
Yeah, that was in about 40 minutes of the lesson.
Wow. Okay. Sorry. I just noticed you had the same outfit. Yeah. I was like trying to figure, is this like going over 4 or 5 ? Okay. Awesome. Sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah, the cool thing about her was, her want to get better allowed her to take on the little task. And we just had a completion with each task. It's like that first one we were tossing the ball, it's just, we got to tap our foot and be in balance. And then we just started layering little things on where we could finally get back to the golf club. And, we all live in a world when we're teaching club golfers, especially in today's world where we're looking at YouTube coaches and everybody sharing information, which is such an awesome thing, but it also leaves a lot of outlets for our members to go jumping into different things. So we need to be able to measure some stuff right off the bat that's going to work. So having the ability with a launch monitor and swing catalyst to be able to show, hey, there is a definite improvement right off the bat here. We're doing something different, and we're doing it in the least amount of chest moves possible. So that's what I mean by calling high mileage plays, which is something I'm always trying to get better at each and every day. So a more experienced player here, former really good player, former club professional turned AM, and his concept of the golf swing had a lot to do with, he was taught by his father, used to have a shut face, pulled through really hard, held the club. And as you can see here, threw the ball, not quite the impact conditions that a better player might have. One of the sneaky things about what we noticed here right off the bat was his footwear. He has really wide feet, has a lot of problems finding footwear that fits, and he had turned to a really stacked, I believe it's Homa, or a running brand that has a huge sole on it. That huge sole, as you can see in the detailed data here, likes to pitch him very much towards the balls of his feet. And if we watch where the trace kind of works, it obviously works way out to the ball of the left foot. And combined with his concept of wanting to pull the golf club really hard from the top, shot him to the left really early, and then started backing him up as hard as he could back up, trying to make room for that golf club to get in there. And we ended up through impact with 86% of the pressure through the trail foot. And when we start talking about the sexy stuff with our forces and our torque, you can see there's a couple of double peaks in there. So whenever I see a double peak, it's not the end of the world, but it is certainly something that makes a trigger go off. Do we have a limitation? Do we have some poor biomechanics working through the golf ball, things like that? I always look at that as, are we going to be injury prone?
Hey, Jason.
Yes, sir.
So I think that's a super interesting topic. I'm wondering if you could you take 2 minutes and just build on were those double peaks, or why those double peaks are a bit of a red flag to you?
Sure. So obviously, if we look at the horizontal force, our purple up there at the top is movement along the ground. We're going to see a lot of load to the right. And while we're talking about that, one of the things I try to match up as much as possible, we got so many smart ambassadors with Swing Catalyst, and we've all learned so much through guys like you, Liam, and Dr. Lynn, Mike Adams, Tony Ruggiero, lots of great guys that we're sharing information with all the time. But I'm always trying to match a pivot style with an arm swing length. And sometimes we can get so much movement to the right with an arm swing that's a little shorter that it can throw some timing off. So as we see what he's going to do here, he's going to move to the right. He's going to shift back to the left, start putting the brakes on and going back to the right again. So obviously that throws something into, with most of our TPI backgrounds and things, we know enough to call a spade, maybe not enough sometimes to go in and start operating on things. But I'm worried about his lower back when I see things like that. And then when we look, it's got quite a bit of torque there in the middle. So we know we can use that to our advantage, but then the verticals end up with two small spikes there, which I start worrying about limited hip mobility, ankle mobility, which is one of the reasons I called out the feet a little bit and the shoes on that. So
yeah, that second horizontal peak is interesting. It makes me think like, yeah, it's almost like he's, the body's not working together, right? It's 100%. Like the right side's trying to transfer, get weight over to the left side, and it's doing it in a way where the left side all of a sudden is like, whoa, hey, hang on here, this isn't going to work. Now I got to back this up.
I got to back up. And that I find that a lot with some old school players, which were taught to pull really hard with the left, which we know is not the worst thing in the world, until maybe you start pulling too hard with the left, or you've been doing it for 30 years because your dad told you so.
Right. Anyway, sorry to derail you there, but I think that's important for people to understand. That's a big, easy thing that people can spot in the data.
Is that hard pull to the left and getting over there a little early, having to put the brakes on and say, okay, now how do I square this club? Things start to get a little different. So if we look at, we changed some swing concepts, and I'm sorry on this one that my right-hand camera, we had an outlet below, so I was having to use the left-hand camera on this, but we can automatically see, if we change some of the parameters here, that we're going to lose that double peak in the horizontal with this movement. So One of the things that we went into swing-wise was trying to get the golf club to work inside to inside, and what he was doing with his arms. So some differences in just kind of his concept of the golf swing.
Yeah, that's insane.
And we still had some backup, obviously, but the club's going to exit in a completely different place. Swing direction starts to move to the left a little bit. So we're now a little bit more inside to inside, a whole lot better control of the face. And if we kind of throw some things back up here with, we lost all double spikes.
Nice.
Almost. We had a little hiccup down there in the vertical. But changing footwear was huge. We did find out there's some dorsiflexion issues here. One of the things we fight with club golfers, which I try to be really aware of, especially in prescribing anything that we do at home, is poor ankle mobility. So if you kind of like the info commercial for the Hurricane, you know, it has pegs on the bottom that are real mobile. And ankle mobility combined with footwear, especially with our mature golfers. I try to use the analogy of not walking through the grocery store shuffling your feet when you're 80. Let's work on being able to have some ankle mobility. Golf is a, you know, mobile game, and we're played in all kinds of unstable environments with different lies, things like that. And so creating a mobile, balanced player is always huge, and that has to start from the ground up. So footwear, ankle mobility. When players are aging, 40% of the proprioceptor sensors, if I'm not wrong, are in the feet. If those proprioceptor sensors can't be turned on because the ankles become immobile, then balance really suffers and their ability to move really suffers. And
I think that's so important, Jace. You know, one of the things I really started to realize a couple of years ago, you know, males especially, once they hit 45 or 50, there's such a degradation in the balance system, right? And people are always coming in and they want to be more consistent. They want to be more this. You do that simple eyes closed single leg balance test. It's shocking how many people are under 3. And yeah, footwear is a huge part. Ankle mobility is a huge part. Understanding the foot. I think that's awesome. I'm sure all the pros here can see the massive changes on both the video and in the data. I'm curious as to what did he think? You know, like how did it go with him and the person as you're going, you know, you've got, obviously, you know, we know you're at a very nice club, very successful members. What do people say to you when they come in and you tell them they're wearing the wrong shoes?
Well, I mean,
I feel like you got 3 heads, or?
No, I think all that does is, I mean, especially if you're at a private club like a Jupiter Hills club is, and I deal basically with a captured audience, and it doesn't take too long if you start making really poor play calls for that to run rampant through the membership. So I think, you know, anything that you know, I'm a golf coach, but I try to get smarter at anything so I can fool some people better and not get fired. But you know, more than anything, I think when you're looking at all the details that could be contributing to somebody's poor ball striking, and you can pull out a card like, there's so many different types of mobile and stable footwear. And some guys I'll just ask, hey, do you ever notice that you play better in a certain pair of shoes? Do you play better in your FootJoy Pro SLs, or do you play better in your Tour X? You know, and do you have better ball striking days? Do you feel more balanced? And a lot of those things they'd never thought of. They bought their shoes because they look cool or because Justin Thomas wore them. But they're not looking at that as a piece of equipment. So footwear is 100% a piece of equipment. It's got a fashion statement to it sometimes and a comfort, obviously, but it's definitely a piece of equipment. And if your footwear is not allowing you to connect to the ground properly, or move properly or balance, then your ball striking is going to suffer no matter how cool you look in your shoes. His big thing was how much his ball flight started to change when his concept of how he moved changed. And obviously some instant equity with just calling out the footwear and how much that might have been contributing to some of the things as far as him not being able to get back into his left heel a little bit better, like we'll see on this trace. Much more on the heel as he rounds the corner, which allowed the golf club to move back to the inside, and his finish to be more stable, whereas this one takes a long time when gravity's pushing back against you a little bit with the heel of that shoe, pushing you out towards the ball of your feet so much.
Now I'm wondering, were the benefits to him, was it, increased distance, increased consistency, reduced pain, play more golf in a week, all of the above?
All of the above. If you probably put at the top of the pyramid for him was the loss of heel contact.
Okay.
Struggled with heel contact quite a bit, struggled with the occasional shank,
Right.
and just the inability to control the club face because we just weren't at the center of it. So start direction got a lot better, and heel contact was almost eliminated when he started moving correctly.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Sorry, I'll stop interrupting you now and let you keep
No
going.
worries, man. I love it. So we're going to throw up another little case study. I'm sure coaches out there can look at some of these golf swings and you're dealing with some of the same thing every day. And I love the forces and torques. They're just way down on my list of things to worry about in early lessons.
Right.
It's sexy stuff to talk about. It is 100% some of the coolest things I think we've learned as coaches over the last, 10 years. But I kind of wait for it I need to get the engine tuned up a little bit before I start twisting the knobs, as Mike Adams likes to say, which is one of the coolest things in the world, how we can actually adjust those forces to gain some speed. But in teaching the club golfer on the first couple of lessons, I want to buy some equity before I get to some of that, which is what we're talking about today. So this player, absence of a MCL in his right knee, should be operated on, does not want to quit playing golf just yet. And as you can see in his setup, very narrow, which most of the time we would say is going to eliminate maybe some side-to-side movement, but he's going to figure out a way to get there anyway. And as you watch him here, loaded up quite a bit on his trail foot, even though that's his most unstable place to be. And get you a better look here. We're going to move quite a bit to the trail foot. And he will start to suffer from reverse spine tilt here. So I've had a discussion with him about how he pivots, how his feet are working to the ground, because this is a guy that's going to get hurt. He's going to compensate for his unstable right leg and shift a lot to the left side and start backing up. Hold on for dear life. And I'm worried about a back injury through here quite a bit. So even though he loads up quite a bit on that trail leg, he's going to get the hell out of there as fast as he can and get to 100% on his lead foot as he's throwing the club at the ball, fast as he can get it there. So we did some things with him in setup change and just some pivot change and working on how he might feel being a little bit more stable on the inside of that leg. You can see his stance is going to be widened quite a bit. I'm back here tugging on his pocket just to give him a different feel of where that right hip may go. He does have some hip issues. This is one of those guys that a lot of us may find at our clubs. This guy works out like a maniac. He's got a home gym, and I asked him about his workout. He was more than happy to give me about a 18-minute session on how many curls, leg extensions, bench presses that he does, none of which are helping his golf game at all.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
We did have a conversation about some of the things I'd like to see him add to his workout routine, but this was just an idea of how to get a pivot to start shallowing the club a little bit. We let him do it on his own here with an arms crossed drill. So much different pivot look there. His cue was kind of trying to spread the pressure. So trying to spread it a little bit more between both feet. I call his original pivot trying to shoot a cannon from a canoe. And we were trying to stand on the deck of a battleship here rather than the look we have here where look like we're rocking in a canoe. So after we got some of this dialed in where we could give him some type of feel, we're working against quite a few limitations here. So anytime I can get a direction of the pivot, I'm not concerned with the amount. If I can get the direction of the pivot a little bit better, how much they do that's got to fall within the bounds of what they can do physically. So if we go to a before and after style here. This was a stop action drill, so we can tell here very quickly we widened his stance, pressed him a little bit more forward into his lead foot at address, and we're going to try to make a better pivot here. He is going to do a little bit of a stop action at the top because we were working on the pivot, so we'll give you the old versus the new. And so as he comes down, try to match his arms up and his club face obviously a little bit better with what he did in his pivot. And he'll back up just a little bit because he's going to pause and start down. But if we watch the difference in how the club traveled down just by better pivot action, got quite a noticeable difference in the shallowness of the golf club and the face orientation, just with a little bit of grip change and pivot change. And impact conditions get quite a bit better.
So, Jason, this brings me to another question. I mean, that's, you know, before and after, I can see a ton of stuff in the down the line. I think the face on, I'm guessing, really, really resonated with the player when he saw that. I got to think that was a holy crap moment.
100%, especially for a guy who's hit as many massive pull shots as he's hit, and understanding where the face was and how the ball was starting so much to the left.
So here's I guess what I'm wondering is I love all this stuff because you're taking tons of complex information. You know, the Swing Cat is giving you obviously a massive amount of data, but you're delivering it in such a simple manner. I'm wondering, is there any way that you could just shed some light on, like, what was the evolution process to get to the point where you could deliver things that simple? You know, was it a conscious effort?
It probably starts with the fact that I'm not that smart. So I've got
Come on now. Don't let the accent fool anybody.
I would first have to say that it's a heck of a lot to do with great mentors, especially the ones we have in the Swing Catalyst family, that are always sharing information and things like that. It's a big part of what we do. But, you know, guys like you and we've talked about Mike Adams and Dr. Lynn and all the guys with what we have, and then mentors in the past that actually had figured some of this stuff out without the help of Swing Catalyst. And I think one of the things that's helped me is that it's improved me and my eye in trying to figure out how to call a high mileage play. So before I opened my mouth in any lesson, and as a younger teacher, I know I was really poor at this. I try to get better at it every day, is taking the complex stuff and making it simple, drawing a parallel to something they've done athletically in the past. How would you produce power? You know, we've got two basic connections in golf, your hands to the club and your feet to the ground. So they've got to be really important. So orientating grips and club faces to match things up better, and orientating how the feet, whether it's, you know, how much foot flare we add, whether it's a pivot style, whether it's, you know, what force is going to be dominant based on the athlete. How do we just kind of start connecting dots where it creates a narrative that the player really can understand? So we're at Jupiter Hills, we're big on concepts. So we talk a lot. We have the low-hanging branch type of stuff is something we really preach. It's like, if we can't put our hands on the golf club and set up the way this athlete needs to set up, taking their build, their limitations, the things that they do well, taking away things we might be having to teach around. I'm not a stack and tilt coach, but if I hadn't have looked at stack and tilt, there was a lady several years ago I wouldn't have been able to help. She had 2 pins in her right leg and her trail leg. She was never going to be able to pivot
Right.
in a traditional type of sense, if you want to use that word. And we were able to stack her up and add some things that those guys teach and coach and make her a functional golfer and send her out there playing so she could play in tournaments and buy more sports.
Nice. That's critical. We got to keep those pro shop sales going, man.
100%.
Well, I want to just touch on one point for everyone out there watching before I let you keep going. But, you know, you talk about, I'm going to misquote you, but you talk about drawing analogies for people. And I think that's really important for coaches out there. When people come to you for a golf lesson, they're coming to you for a golf lesson because they don't know golf. So I think it's very powerful to not talk to them about golf, right? Talk to them about what they do know, whether it's like, I don't know, whether it's tennis or, I mean, for us up in Canada, hockey or, you know, throwing a ball or hitting a baseball or anything. And that's, I mean, it's probably one of my biggest nightmares when I get someone who comes in, thinks they're an athlete, and I ask what they do. They say they run marathons and they're a long distance swimmer.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, here we go. I got nothing. Anyway, this is great stuff. Keep going. I love it.
The locker you guys could probably see behind me is affectionately known as the Hurt Locker. It's got all my toys. There is a tennis racket in there. There's a baseball hat. There's rolled up towels. Golfers want to be powerful. And so anytime we make a change, the 2 questions I always ask are, do you feel more stable and balanced? And do you feel powerful? If they don't feel stable and balanced, or they don't feel more powerful, they're not going to do it. They're going to backtrack into something that feels that way with them. So I think listening and creating an open dialogue, I search for active participants to work with. I want an active participant in their own improvement. And so I want their feedback. And if they say, wow, I do feel more powerful, and yes, I feel more balanced, and wow, I think I could swing the golf club from inside the target line, or I could hit a draw from here. Any of those cues that come back to you as a coach, those are signals that you're on the right track. How far you go down that track in a lesson, you obviously have to be careful of. We've all made that mistake where we were batting 1,000 and we threw one extra thing in there and we should have saved it, you know. I think as we all get better each day, trying to learn, trying to call better plays, your playbook's got to get thicker. But it's also got to get simpler, and you've got to get where you can call fewer of them that give you the most mileage. And my first play, my father was a high school football coach for 40 years, so I love the calling plays analogy that a lot of coaches use. And I'm always trying to hand off and let's get 3 yards. Let me buy a little equity. And then we'll call another play and we'll try to get 3 more yards. Let me buy a little more equity. Sometimes in some of these videos, especially like the lady we saw earlier, all right, the couple of simple play calls in the beginning, you know, we had a couple of first downs right off the bat with some simple stuff. And you're going to have that happen. And that's the time to kind of go, hey, we're where we want to be. Let's keep reinforcing that and move from there. But I think just as developing coaches, like we all still should be, is how many high mileage plays can we call early on in a lesson that are going to change something dramatically and put us in a position where we're going to get return business. There's nobody at our clubs that we can't help, or on our tees that we can't help. Sometimes we're not given enough time to do that. And an hour golf lesson is very little in the time of changing a player. So allowing yourself to continue to buy that equity and get down the road where you're returning them and creating a transformational situation with a player rather than just, hey, give me some money and I'll see you next week.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll look at one more real quick, if that's all right with you, pal.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Okay. This is one of my favorites. What can we do in an hour golf lesson? So we'll just look at the golf swing here. I'll let this one play in slow motion a couple of times. Get a sense of what we might be working with here. Our forces and torques look like an EKG. Give you an idea of what's going on in the ground here. So this is my Charles Barkley type student, where things are so out of order, club face so open, golf swing so steep. He's just got to hang on for dear life here for a second, kind of pause up because he doesn't know what to do with it all. And we'll figure out a way to hit it. So this is one of those ones we're creating awareness. I mean, obviously his friends have told him he swings over the top and things like this, and I got to swing from the inside. That's about the least of his concerns in a first lesson with me. So this was literally the first couple of swings we had with him. This was an awareness lesson to start with. So one of the things that we did early on was, this is a taped up, rolled up towel, and I don't have the opposite version of this drill that we did, but to create some awareness of not tipping so much out over the balls of his feet, we rolled it up and put it under the balls of his feet. Later on in some swings that I don't actually have on video, I actually went back to his heels and made him where he had to fight going to the balls of his feet. So this would be the awareness part. To say we're gonna swing a little differently here. And there was no real club talk at this point. This was just, what are we gonna do with your feet? So without prompting much from the club at all, he obviously knows he's been quite over it for quite some time. Just the difference in what's happening with the pressure in his feet will create quite a bit of difference in what's happening with the golf club on the way down. Now, obviously, we've got some back issues I'm a little worried with there, but we're moving in the right direction at least. We then moved into a couple of other feelings here. And I'm sorry I'm standing in the way. I was videoing something on Coach Now for him. But if we take a look at some launch monitor data here and what we were able to change from a club pass standpoint, 14.8 to the left in the old one, made an adjustment with the club face and his grip and some awareness. And we started hitting some little draws out there. The club traveled down much differently. And obviously, it doesn't take much prompting that we're on the right track when you show him through impact and you ask him which athlete he'd rather be. We got some steepness out, got the club path moving from the inside. He saw a ball start to the right and curve to the left for the first time instead of these massive pulls and slices. So obviously still got some work to do on some things with him, but just the awareness of where he was with his feet and the pressure, his connection to the ground, we made quite a bit of progress in one lesson. Probably capable of doing that without the plate, just because it's telling the truth and it's allowing them for the first time maybe to understand how they were moving and how to start moving differently and how big of an influence that can have on the way the golf club swings.
Wow. Yeah, that's a bit of a life changer for that guy there, isn't it?
100%. I mean, we still have the battle of holding on to that. We still have the battle of coaching that player into taking it to the golf course, things like that. But as far as, I bought myself another lesson for sure.
Yeah, I would say right after that would be a good time to hit him up for the annual program, no doubt.
If I can get him again, I can get him again. That's what we're working on for sure. That's how we make it.
Yeah, no kidding. So here's, we've got a few minutes left. Everyone out there, Jason's got a call with the PGA of America that he's going to have to hop on to. But I'm wondering, could you walk us through, you know, even maybe call up one of the swings that you haven't taken a look at. And I'm wondering if you could walk us through kind of how you do your initial, you know, your initial analysis, you know, like first look at a golf swing and just let everyone out there see some of the checkpoints that you have.
Sure. Let's take somebody here else. So we'll go back to an original lesson with an early lesson with a kid.
I know, you know, back, Bruce McCarroll was the name of the PGA of Canada coach that I mentored under. And I loved, always felt like I got so much out of watching his process of looking at a golf swing for the very first time.
So this is a kid, going to be a really good player. One of our first times looking together. And like with kids, there's obviously, we've got a bunch of coaches watching. There's a lot of things you might pick up on that you want to change, or you're immediately, and I'm drawn to one of the stories that I heard from Cam McCormick early on about Jordan. Davis is already a good player. He wants to be a better player. And but when I first got him, we're kind of getting ready to start the spring season type of thing. And so I'm looking at, like, the kid's already a good player. All right, what are the things that are making him a good player? Instead of looking at what do I not like about Davis's golf swing, I'm going to look at, like, what do I do like? What's the things that make it function? And I tell coaches all the time, especially guys that are learning to teach, as we all hopefully still are, but it's like, if you find a player at your club whose golf swing doesn't look pretty, all right, but the guy plays well, all right, and it looks a little odd, and there's some things that you might not coach somebody to do, but the guy really plays well, that's the one you want to get on video. You want to get on that one on video, and you want to figure out how that golf swing actually works. What are the steeps and shallows in that golf swing? How does this person move? How does this person manage something that we might not call stylistically, you know, pretty? Because those are the fun ones. Those are the ones that can really, you can really learn something from, to me. So I kind of take that look at we all have our preferences as coaches. Most of the time in my preference is not this move to the right. That doesn't make it wrong. But that's Davis at this point. So there's no robbing him of that at this point in his career. Not strong enough maybe to handle some of the things I might see as a preference. But we got this move rock off. I'm looking at the pressure in his feet. How does it match what he does with his arm swing? How does he use the ground? As he gets stronger, taking a kid here, we can see some of the torques and the forces there. And I'm looking at, okay, when I'm ready to go past the low-hanging branches, we had to work on some injury prevention with him because of some severe right side bend in his past. And we had to look at, you know, getting him strong enough to handle some of the things he may want to do as a budding college player in a couple of years. How do we match up the strength and conditioning part with the coach there? How do we match up the swing mechanics, and how do we keep Davis being Davis? Okay, he's a low single-digit handicapper with what he has. So I'm looking at, obviously, where does he start with his feet? What are his pressure shifts? How could we turn the knobs in the future to add some power? And how do I protect him in the future from being injury prone?
Yeah, I like that. I love the way you started that, because it kind of reminds me of something I usually say when I get a good player in there to start off, and it's, you know, I need you to understand it's a heck of a lot easier for me to make you worse than it is for me to make you better. And I also need to understand, did you come here to my academy to get different or to shoot lower scores?
Yes.
And I think that those are some things that really help crystallize the start of a relationship with a player. Now I've got, Jason, I got one question here. This is coming from Monique Torres, and she wanted to know if you could build on What was your cueing that you gave to the golfer that was standing on the towel? You know, did you want him to feel the pressure under his toes the whole swing, or was the towel there to force him to get pressure off of his toes?
The towel there was to create the awareness in the beginning, and we talked about if we were going to have the golf club swing from the inside, Monique, that we were going to have to create room to do that. So with the towel under the balls of his feet, like I said, this was the first part of the drill. Then just like the lady, when I was using the tubing, we made them work against the tendency. So I like to show them, and then I like to put them in an environment where the towel is actually going to force them out on their toes, and they've got to still figure out a way to create the room. So in the first part of this, the cueing was basically, if we're going to have this golf club move from the inside and on a better path to the golf ball, we're not going to be able to have our body in there in the way like we did early on. So with him moving so much out to the ball, and obviously we use some of our drawing tools here that are fantastic with Swing Cat. And it doesn't take much for him to see, whoa, where am I going? And how am I going to make a golf club swing from the inside if my head's getting over the ball? So when he saw how much the pressure was tipped out towards the balls of his feet, as you can see right there, as he's coming down, there's no room for the golf club to swing from the inside. So him being told forever and ever that you're over the top, John, you're over the top. How do we figure out a way to make room? And that's what the towel cueing was for.
All right. So first you put it under the toes to kind of force him to keep his weight back on his heels.
Correct.
And did you go and put it under the heels once he had some success?
Correct.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's important. I mean, that to me, that's a playbook that at least I stole it right out of John Dunnigan. That's for sure, right? Whoever does the work does the learning. So I think you put the towel down under their feet, and I'd say stage one, put it under the toes. It's like a crutch.
Exactly.
Right? It's going to help them get around when they can't get around. And then as soon as they see the benefits and mentally they bought into it, we flip it, put it under the heels, and now make them do the work against all the resistance.
Yeah, and we used rolled up towels, and we use half tennis balls forever. I know there's a company now, Force Pedals, that Mike Adams has been working with, which we've got some on the way. But anything that you can use that's going to create some type of awareness of them. So one of the things that I'll do, the same thing is, we'll put a half a tennis ball under the ball of their foot and get them moving a certain way, then put it under the heel of their foot and ask them to smash it, or, hey, your wife's earring is under this part of your foot, don't smash it, that kind of thing. Just any kind of simple cue that can get them moving in a different direction.
Okay, awesome. I love it. Well, I guess Jason, I know you've got to hop off on another call. Did you have any closing thoughts that you wanted to share with the group here today?
Well, first of all, I was delighted that you asked. Thank you very much. I feel honored. There's, like I've said before, we've got a fantastic group of coaches that are involved with Swing Catalyst. I feel really lucky that I was in with this company earlier, because I can't tell you how much better of a coach I think they've made me, not only through the technology part, but getting to hang around the guys that I get to hang around, ladies. Tom and Tim with Swing Catalyst and the support staff have been nothing but outstanding through my relationship over the past 8 years or so with them. Dr. Lynn's been outstanding. And of course, Liam, you're always the legend that you are. But Mike Adams, those guys, Tony, John Dunnigan, super group of guys to learn from and be around. And I hope that I've been able to share a little bit of that with the audience today. It certainly was my pleasure.
Yeah, no, appreciate you taking the time. We know you're fortunate to be one of those spaces where the golf course is still open. So, I just want to give you a shout out, some recognition for, quite frankly, for taking some money out of your pocket to spend some time with us here today.
Well, I am fortunate to still be coaching at a safe distance. Obviously, had a couple this morning, a couple this afternoon, but I want all the coaches out there who are not that fortunate at this point, to know that my thoughts and prayers are with you. And we will get back to that. So I appreciate y'all taking the time. That was nothing for me to do that, since there's a lot of coaches that aren't in my position right now.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jason. Could you maybe just do me a quick favor and unshare your screen for me there?
Certainly. All the best to everyone.
Thanks, pal. So for all of you that are still out there and still have questions, we do have to put a wrap here on the webinar. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to do an Instagram live broadcast for the Q&A. So if you guys are able to see my camera right now, I think I successfully made this virtual background. But if you follow at Liam Mucklow on Instagram, in 3 minutes here, I'm going to be doing an Instagram live broadcast. I've got Blake Thomas here with me. We're at the academy here at University Club in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And we're going to go through some of the towel demo drills. We're going to talk about a couple of the other tricks that Jason uses, and also show you a little bit about how we use the software to accelerate learning, some simple biofeedback stuff that you can do, just by reorganizing the displays. So other than that, I hope everybody out there is safe and healthy. I know we all want to get back to work soon, but at the same time, I applaud everyone for taking time out to try and learn from one of the best. Jason, thanks again. And to everyone, have a great day. Hopefully we'll see you on Instagram.